This is a pretty heavy question.
Okay.
Kendrick, Lamar, or Drake?
Now, I'm going to expose myself, okay?
Hello, this is Justice Smith with Proverbs Media Group, and today we have a very special guest that we're all a very big fan of. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Hollywood Morris.
It is always glad to be here with you, Justice. You know, we're going to have a great time. Let's do it.
Absolutely. So first, I'd love to provide a little background to the audience. Tell them what you're all about. What is this cause that you fight for?
Yes. So literally now, almost 4 years ago, when the Defund the Police movement exploded, not just nationally, but remember, this was internationally as well. Just that I felt very convicted being a kid who grew up broken home. Both my parents were functioning alcoholics. So my introduction into peace officers and police was at a very early age. And the positive impact they had on my life is a huge part of my testimony. So I could not just sit back and watch them be demonized and demoralized as well as defunded without speaking out. So I created Support Our Shields to push back against that, but to also focus on the positive stories that the media, I believe, intentionally does not highlight because they're too focused on pitting us against each other based on, whatever dermal differences that we have. And so what I've realized with this, especially in the last 2 years of traveling all over the country, sadly, when we lose an officer, we have so much more in common, as Americans than we ever have apart. But if we allow, the powers that be to convince us otherwise, the old adage of divide and conquer, we're seeing it happen every day.
Absolutely.
So that is what you talked about, the energy. This is what gets me going every day to push back and expose that and show, how much unity we really have, especially in the body of Christ.
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more. You bring up a really important point.
Yes.
The media is intentionally creating more divisive points. It's spreading the Overton's window. It's making fanaticism almost impossible from either side to find common ground.
Yes.
Why do you think the powers that be are promoting this divide?
Yes, because they want absolute power. Just absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the only way that you can do that, especially here for Americans, we take our freedoms for granted so much because we've never really traveled, abroad to see how so many people in the rest of, the world live. And so you have to cause the grievance because without it, we really wouldn't have a reason to be at each other the way that they are trying to condition us to be, because we'll see it if you, and this is my lived experience, Justice, is you can go playground, kids, nobody necessarily may look alike. You find friendship with the kid who has the same interest that you do. Mm-hmm. And we see it when we think about it subconsciously. We see it every weekend. College football just started.
That's right.
So I'm huge into that. And we'll get 130,000 people in a stadium every Saturday for 5 hours who all come from different backgrounds, are going to go in different directions, but I've grown up and experienced it forever, but we can get on the same accord and we'll go against the opposing team. And so we really can do that in our everyday lives if we're really focused and being led, by a spirit. I'm like, it's really something that is mandated in our faith. But that's why they have to separate us from our faith as well first, just as in order to accomplish all that we're seeing, front and center today in America.
Well said. I always like to ask to a person as brilliant as yourself, there always must be some inspiration behind this.
Yeah.
What's your favorite book?
Ooh, can I give you two?
Of course. I need to add more to my list.
Gotcha. I would say first one, Torture for Christ, and Richard Weinberger. I'm going to butcher that last name, but he was a German pastor who basically saw his family torn apart in Nazi Germany. And so I read this book at like 22 years old, and the impact of understanding what you may be required to do when you say that you're going to live for Jesus. You know, it may not always be, you know, the glitz and glamour that we associate sometimes in the West. The second one would be Fault Lines, Dr. Vodi Bakum.
Wow.
And the reason on that, I think it may be one of the most important books this century, because he gives the timeline, Justice, of this cultural Marxist movement. And if you understand that, then you see what you and I just talked about the powers that be and the divide and conquer, because I love the way he lays it out, which is they couldn't use the traditional Marxist, you know, communist ideology of, well, rich against poor. That wasn't working so well in America, because you take someone like me who, check this out, brother, neither one of my grandfathers could read or write. They could barely sign their own name. That's my grandfathers. My great-grandfather, I know one was born into slavery. The second one, I'm not sure about. My father only finished 9th grade. His father only finished 2nd grade. Yet, you know, in 1996, I had a pick of 20 universities that I could choose from. This is in one generation. Yeah, so the whole Marxist, you know, that marketing scheme wasn't working. So we had to turn it around and play the race part of it in, and that's what Dr. Bakum explained so well. You had to find something that you could pit people against each other who have more in common than they don't. So that's why Fault Lines that's why I couldn't pick just the one. It's got to be those two.
Incredible answer. I mean, you're amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so humbled and honored to be in your presence. What you're doing is exceptional.
Thank you.
I really admire what you're doing.
You,
Absolutely. And now I got to ask, just like the sports, there's one other thing that brings everyone together.
Yes.
There's one language we all speak.
Yes.
That's music.
Yes.
What's your favorite music?
Oh, I am very eclectic.
Okay.
That I have to contribute that to my dad. So I would say, now growing up, it was Michael Jackson.
Amen, yeah.
You know, you can do a timeline, just as when we're now, and when I sit back and someone tells me how old they are, and I was like, you were born after Thriller. And I was like, that's just like a major timeline, bro. But if I actually like a lot of very old soul music, Sam Cooke, Otis Redding.
Yes.
The most songs, now this one is going to get you, if out of any artist, you know, on my digital jukebox, if you will, on my PC is like 20 gigabytes. I have more Marvin Gaye than any other artist. And some of it is not what his hits were that he was known for. Of course, What's Going On, yes. But it is a lot of his, it was called his tributes to Frank Sinatra. And that call, I'm like, my brother comes in, he's like, what has happened to you?
Wow.
And what have you done with my brother? It's like, yeah, so if it's not the classic soul, neo soul, yeah, I like a lot of smooth, calming. Yeah, that's my style.
Oh, wow. I gotta say, When Did I Stop Loving You by Marvin Gaye is one of the greatest songs ever made.
Yes.
Sonically, the melodies, it is so complex in structure. It's beautiful.
Okay. See, yeah, we're gonna go. This is gonna be a long conversation, because that that song won, because that was not a commercial hit.
That's right.
What I explained to people, and it's you and one other person, if the only two people that I've ever talked to in 20 years that know that song and that album. what I try to get people to see, Justice, is what you said. We have to remember, this is pre-computer. All of those other voices is him on different tracks. This is in 1973. I was like, you got to understand.
Yes.
I was like, now, he might not have been sober when he recorded a lot of that stuff. But I was like, remember, he's not patterning anyone else. He's doing this for the first time. So I guess when you tie it into, with MJ, a lot of the dance, totally original. So yes, going through that whole album and watching what he's doing lyrically, amazing.
Incredible. Couldn't agree more.
Now I'm gonna play that.
Oh yeah, we gotta add that for at least 30 seconds.
Yes.
So I gotta warn you, we're gonna veer somewhere very controversial now.
All right.
This is a pretty heavy question.
Okay.
Kendrick Lamar or Drake?
Now I'm gonna expose myself. Okay. I think Drake has a song called Hold On, We're Going Home.
That's right.
That is Drake.
That's right.
Okay. And Kendrick Lamar is DNA.
That's right.
Okay. That's all I know.
That's all you need to know.
Now, if Drake walked in because of him doing all of the sideline cameo stuff, I could recognize him. Kendrick, I couldn't help you. I couldn't even, he could sat there. I'd be like, who? And it wouldn't be out of disrespect.
Sure.
I was like, yeah, they totally lost me in that shot.
No problem.
Not a shock from the guy, again, that if I got in the car right now, probably Otis Redding would be the first song that came on.
Absolutely.
Yes. So,
Otis Redding, absolutely
yes.
classic. We need to trade playlists after this. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's coming.
Absolutely. So another thing I'd like to ask, in the vein of controversy, what's your favorite conspiracy theory?
Oh, okay. It's hard to pick just. It's hard to pick just one on that one too. I was glad you gave me thoughts. Most recent, everything we saw with the lockdown in 2020, and as it's been termed, pandemic. That's got to be, because before that, and mind you, I was born, both of my parents, my mom was like 36, so kind of, later in the line of 6 children, but they were old enough to remember the moon landing. So my dad was one of those who always, it was a studio, but I wasn't old enough to, really catch that. And he was a big, JFK, grassy knoll. And I'm like, okay, he got me with that one. Just a lot of that doesn't make sense. Watching what happened the last 4 years, and that is so timely now that Mark Zuckerberg just sent a letter to Congress apologizing. I was like, well, better late than never, but a lot of us was thrown off of the platform, the last 4 years for daring to question the science. Yeah, so the COVID, because we were watching, and I think this is also so timely, brother, is that we literally, for all of the people, 2 months to election, I bring up to them, you literally, for the first time in our lifetime, you have both administrations that you can stack up the policies and the results and how we were living, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago compared to now. I have not ran into a person just to say, I'm better in 2024 August than I was in 2019. And so for me, you literally had to do something to derail the greatest economy that we had seen in the past plus 100 years. Yeah, so that, it's COVID.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. One of my good friends,
Yeah.
his son is a Navy SEAL.
Yes.
36 years old, completely healthy.
Right.
Got the jab. 2 weeks later, myocarditis.
See?
It's unreal.
Right.
It's unreal.
Right. And we're hearing younger than him. And you know how this ties in to the Support Our Shields is the amount of officers very young experiencing the same issues, but this is all post 2020. What's the time? What's the line that connects that together? Call us conspiracy theorists today. We'll be vindicated shortly.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So mentioning Mark Zuckerberg with this letter that he just sent out, it is very much a bombshell.
Correct.
He's saying some heavy stuff on there. He is apologizing for actively working with the Democratic Party to censor anything that questioned their narrative, censor the Hunter Biden laptop. It's unreal.
Right.
It's unreal. So I got to ask, what do you think is the role of social media today in influencing the people's thought?
Yes. I think his letter, like you said, the reason why it's such a bombshell is that, remember, was in response to leaders like Dianne Feinstein, Kamala Harris, who were basically threatening to levy the government and shut down social media companies that they said were engaging in disinformation. Just if we did not have independent media today, I think our country as we know it would have already fallen, to this cultural Marxism. Mm-hmm. That is all we have. Because when you see traditional media, it's pathetic. They're not even trying to hide how biased they are anymore. And so when you see someone like Joe Rogan, who was, easily the number one podcast, I believe, until a couple of months ago, he's surpassed by Tucker. And what you see Daily Wire doing, what you see Vince Ellison doing, a Candace Owens even. You have so many different voices. Who was the actor that Russell Brand?
Oh, I love him.
Right. Watching his growth over the last 2 years and the spiritual awakening, like we're seeing that there is no way just traditional media would touch that. Mm-hmm. And to think about even this year, what we saw, actually last year, we saw Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon fired on the same day.
Wow.
How have those two experiments gone? Don is doing irrelevant man on the street interviews in Atlantic City and preaching to people saying that now mind you, I think from a media background, he thought that if he went up and interviewed Black people walking in New Jersey, he was going to get a different response than what he got. And so the beautiful thing about the video is he's asking all of them why they're supporting President Trump, and they are all talking about the economy and how their lives were better. And he's like, no, but the economy is better now. And they're all looking at him like, maybe for you, multimillionaire, not for us. That is a great representation of the difference in independent media and why social media is so important than what every communist ran country and what their citizens live under on a daily basis. And we don't have to go that far, Cuba, Venezuela, anyone, to realize it's a reason why they risk their lives to come here. Mm-hmm. That should be a wake-up call, Justice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the social media thing, you're spot on. I completely agree. It is so important for us to get our message out there. Yes. And with independent journalism, it's one of our last bastions of hope.
Correct.
People like Russell. Hi, Russell. He's like the modern day Aristotle.
Exactly.
I love to see the progress and the development. Yes. It's beautiful.
Yes.
So what do you think is the biggest problem in the world today?
Ooh. You know what? It really goes to the root of sin. It's wickedness. And because of out of that tree, you get all of the rotten fruit that we're seeing, whether, it's pride, whether it's, rampant perversion that we're seeing promoted. All of that is coming from, basically the root cause of sin. And they don't like their deeds being exposed. That is why the censorship and why what we're seeing with what Mark admitted to is so important, is because we were all saying, in our small circles, we knew what was going on. We saw our numbers going down. We saw, our impressions going down, and they literally sat there in Congress and said, "Oh no, this is a right-wing conspiracy theory."
Yep.
Remember the Zuckerbucks and all of that with, with 2020? I was like, we literally were told that we're crazy. Now we're, you notice that's on page 10 and it's not, it's not front page, but the impact is still so huge because the only way just that this, evil is allowed, to completely march on in progress is we have to stop being salt and light. And so what they're trying to do digitally is, well, if we suppress you, then you can't get out the light. And, they don't understand that, because they have the blinders on, but you're not going to stop Christ's work. Good luck trying. You're like the hamster wheel there. But yeah, that doesn't stop them from trying. Yeah, they're going to try though.
Absolutely. It's amazing. And I love getting to talk to like-minded individuals. Yes. And you're like the ultimate testament to someone that can make it, someone who can succeed, someone who wants to support the community. Yes. I love this so much.
Yes. Think about, I told you I have the amazing stories, Justice. So I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right? Mm-hmm. So have you ever seen the documentary Cocaine Cowboys?
Of course.
So my wife is like, he's obsessed with it. He needs help. But it's because when they mentioned some of those areas in the shootout at the Mall of the Americas in Miami, we knew where all of that was. And so to literally be a 10-year-old, 9 and 10, and watch when crack hit the neighborhood, in the mid 80s, right? So it was already a neighborhood that didn't have a lot of homeowners. It wasn't government housing, but it was definitely low income. Mm. And bro, when you saw crack roll in, I mean, you talk about zombies. And well, now why are people walking the street at 3:00 in the morning and that type of deal? And so many people did not make it out. And so that's where that gratefulness comes from, that when you realize every day, that you could have, your life could have totally gone in a different direction. And also but it was that literally, so I was bused out, my elementary school was all the way across town. So you would leave, drug invested crack area, and then you go and there's like, oh wow, this is a nice playground and manicured lawns. It was that, it was a way that you got a picture. I literally had to make a decision. Is this what you want? Are you so willing to fit in with your friends in the neighborhood that you're going to go down a path that is going to lead you to a life, of complete crime and chaos? Or do you want to go in a different direction? And I didn't realize this, probably until 15 years, like the Lord was literally placing all these people, teachers, police officers, my wife's father, which was my first job in my life strategically at all these points. I was not aware of it, oblivious, but they were literally steering me on this path to bring me to where we are today. Wow. And so that is why the presentations a lot of times become emotional. It's, for one, there's a family, there's a community and a law enforcement department that are devastated, especially when it's an officer who is so young. The youngest one I did last year was Jessica Ebenhausen, 19 years old. That is devastating. But then I'm also so thankful because the Lord has literally brought me on this journey to be able to now be there today to put my arms around people I don't know. And, that may be a representation of someone they have, never met. And I've seen it happen so many times. Just like, okay, this is God moving. Yes. It may not be in a mission field in Cambodia. It can be in Cleveland, Ohio. That'll work.
Right. Absolutely. So you bring up one of the most important problems that our country is facing. And as such a vocal supporter of law enforcement, thank you. How do we tackle the war on drugs? How do we help people get treatment? Do we help them get treatment? What is the correct channel or avenue whereby we can fix this problem?
It has to be multifaceted. Has to be. One of the things, I'll tell you how you remember like the 12-step program ties in. They always start with, first you have to admit that you have a problem. And so how this hits home for me is, I told you, both of my parents were functioning alcoholics, which mean they worked. My dad worked. I literally watched him drink himself to passing out pretty much every night during the week, would always be up at 5 o'clock the next day because he was raised in a different time. And he was like, you're my responsibility. Nobody cares how I feel. He was like, I get up and go to work. So that was, that personal accountability was driven home. And so that ties into how we have to approach it. We, first of all, have to acknowledge the problem. We can't even get the current administration to admit that leaving the border open is causing the fentanyl to pour in, which is seeping all across the country. Rural, small towns, justice is there. And that's one of the things I'm learning about meeting with so many law enforcement agencies is you're seeing it in towns that have less than 2,000 people. How is that? That's not by accident. Mm-hmm. So one, addressing and acknowledging that the problem is real. We have to start pushing personal accountability and responsibility at an early age again. We want every kid is a superstar in the truck. Yeah, that wasn't my generation. So, but check this out. My first, you were saying about the Kendrick, Lamar, and Drake. So like the first, now I'm definitely dating myself, but I was literally 2 years old when the first rap song with Rapper's Delight, explodes on the scene, right? So when I'm in elementary school, Run DMC is the biggest thing. Justice, to see police officers come to your elementary school and rap about saying no to drugs. Like I was that first generation Dare kid. And so it was so cool that, now watch how it plays forward. So 5 years later, when I'm in middle school and NWA comes out and it's F the police, that was stupid to me at 12 years old because that foundation had already been laid by those cops when I was in the second grade. See, and we've lost that, and a lot of that is intentional. And so when we celebrate, recreational drug use in a culture that makes it cool and acceptable, when you get on it, I mean, look how many states have legalized some form of marijuana use, and then we're not talking about the high amount of THC, which has people hallucinating, and law enforcement are running into suspects who are super amped up, like the angel dust and the PCP of the 70s and 80s. This is causing a domino effect. So we first got to, acknowledge that we have an issue, the personal responsibility and accountability, and we have to get back tough on the punishment. You can't, whenever it never works. You never see a coach, we're in football season again. Bro, you never rebuild a program by saying, okay, well, I'm the new coach. Everybody does what they want. Saban just retired. Alabama, you see, I have one whole closet that is nothing but Alabama gear.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. So to watch you don't win 6 championships in 17 years by saying, okay, well, it really doesn't matter. He was legendary for there being a standard. We have to do it. It has to be at our homes, schools, churches, community. It's all foundational.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. You mentioned education.
Yes.
I think that's one of the first and most important places. That's like the front lines of how we can shape the future generations and maybe have some hope in the future.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on education in general?
Yes.
How it might be improved, what it's doing well? What do you think?
Yes. President Trump was controversial, a couple of weeks ago when he talked about basically exploding, the Department of Education. I think it's long overdue. I think that when we, especially as believers, when we start it, Vodi Bakum says it like this: you don't send your child to Caesar and then are shocked when you have a Roman return to your home. And to see, now again, my experience was very well. I also graduated almost 30 years ago. And so even just last night, I'm at dinner with my TV production teacher who literally became like my adopted mom, and her husband never went through official paperwork, but literally bought my first suit. This is how So you had those teachers who were more than teachers, as they were mentors, and that's why I refer to them as mom and pop. So I don't discredit them, but when we have what we've seen unveiled to us on a national level, since that was the one thing that happened well about the shutdowns, Zoom exposed a lot of propaganda, brother, a lot of propaganda. And when they're called out on it, they're doubling and tripling down, even saying that those are not your kids, they're our kids. You've overstepped. You have completely overstepped your bounds, and that's not by accident. Remember about what I said with cultural Marxism. So they need that. They have to have the indoctrination. That's how you get the next generation. Whether it's Marx, Lenin, Mao, we've seen Castro, Chavez, it's the same pattern. So yeah, I'm at this point, when we were out to dinner, they said that in Broward County, where I was born and raised, I believe it's been 13 public schools are shutting down. Well, in Florida, they're the big push is school choice. Shout out to Governor Ron DeSantis. And so giving parents the option that if the school is not producing, that we take the money and the money follows the child. It's amazing what the competitive marketplace will do.
Yes.
So we're seeing that. And for some parents, they're like, you know what? I want to homeschool. I'm going to homeschool. We're going to do, for some, they're saying, well, we're going to do a neighborhood hybrid of it. We're going to do a charter school. How is it acceptable in our nation? And mind you, they never answer this. Well, they do answer it, but they always do the whole racism excuse. The same people that claim systemic racism, and white supremacy also run all of the major cities with failing school systems like Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, Oakland, Houston. I was like, why is that Detroit? This is unacceptable. But that's because they're not interested in teaching anymore. It's the propaganda of the next generation with their Marxist worldview, not about learning how to read and write and count.
Wow. You're blowing my mind here. You're top notch. Real deal.
I told you we're going in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is incredible.
Yeah.
I'd like for us to try to play a little game.
Okay.
Something a little lighthearted.
Right.
It's called Describe Them in One Word. It's a challenge. It is a challenge. First, Donald Trump.
Fighter.
Brilliant. Kamala Harris.
Chameleon.
I love it. Chameleon Harris is a really
Yes.
good. I love that. I love it. Elon Musk.
Genius.
I agree. Vladimir Putin.
Oh. Complex.
Kim Jong-un.
Psychopath.
Yes. Kanye West.
Oh. Who? Kanye. Confused. Yeah.
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. Oh, I got a couple of them running in there. Candace. Fearless.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Ben Shapiro.
Ben. Oh, he's so quick on his feet. What do I give that one? Oh, you caught me on Tenacious.
Excellent. I agree. Bill Gates.
Weird. Weirdo.
That's perfect. Biden.
Lost.
Now what about Hunter Biden?
Pervert. I threw that out. Was ready for that one, right?
Oh, yeah. Anthony Fauci.
Oh. Diabolical.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk.
Oh, I give Charlie. Awesome.
Agreed.
Yes.
My personal favorite on the list, Elaine Beck.
Elaine Beck is anointed.
Yes. Well put.
Yes.
Well put. Absolutely. Now, I want to ask you, moving away from this segment.
Yes.
if you were given the power of like top dictator or grand pontificate of the universe, you have absolutely uncheckable power for one day. What would you want to put into place policy-wise immediately?
Ooh. Oh, you just gave me a lot. You just gave me a lot. You gave me a lot of power. I got it. Okay. I call them wokeites. So that they worship at the Church of Woke. And so hence the wokeites. I'm like, they can leave. They can leave the United States. They can choose one of the coasts that they want to take. You can take California and New York. But here's the deal. Justin, you got to stay there for 7 years. Have your utopia, but you can't screw it up and then think that you get to leave. No, you're doing 7 years there. So yeah, they think that, this great scheme that they have to bring heaven on earth, I want them to experience, because I think the best way to red pill or leftists is to give them what they want. But we have to have a way of doing that without destroying all of us hardworking patriots.
Yes.
So yeah, you pick it, call it, new woke utopia, but you live there. You create that communist hellhole if you want to, but sure, you will stay there and figure out how you're going to eat. That's what I want.
Wow, that's creative. And maybe we should give you that authority. That's
as you can tell, I've spent a lot of time thinking. Yes. I vent to my wife a lot about that.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, we are literally the poster children. Now, we only grew up, I got to give you this. So we only grew up about 5 blocks away from each other. But in those 5 blocks, you had, like, her parents watched that home be built from the ground up. See, they knew what ownership was, and so they cared about the property value. Her dad was a Army veteran who then went to pharmacy school, and he was the black pharmacist in our community. He was, so brought the pharmacy there for the community and was there for over 30 years. Our dads knew each other, but they didn't run in the same circle, as you can imagine, right? So we're now watching people who are young enough to be our children jump on $1,000 phones every day and claim they're so discriminated against, and white supremacy and white privilege and is systemic racism is holding them back. My wife went to Johns Hopkins and then Tuskegee for her veterinary medicine degree. She was like, I don't understand. And her dad was 40 years before her. Both of our parents grew up in the Jim Crow South of Alabama and South Carolina. They never raised us with this victim mentality and this racist attitudes toward anyone else. And we were always taught, to be grateful of the country and the opportunity that you have to be born in America. So to watch this this whole attitude and this woke mind virus, we literally don't have a lot of tolerance for it, because we know what it's like to work and earn it. And this is the one country in the world where, like I shared with you, you can come from nothing. And her, like I said, because of her parents' decision, it wasn't racism. There wasn't Klan members, Justice, that were putting a gun to my wife's father's head, robbing his store. There are people that look just like us. Both her car was stolen from the parking lot of his pharmacy. My car was stolen from the parking lot. I'm like, that's not white supremacy. You have to take responsibility for your own actions and the reason why the communities are the way they are and the homes are the way they are. And so you turn the page and go to my dad, who was not the model citizen that my father-in-law was, but he would not let me. So I literally, by the time I was 20, had to bail my dad out of jail and my mom out of jail before I could even buy a drink legally if I drank. Think about that. And if it's anyone who would think, oh, well, life isn't fair, I might be the first guy, in line. But just as none of my teachers, my coaches, they all said, we expect better of you. My dad, he never blamed the police. He would come home. When the police came, he didn't fight. He knew what he did. He complied and went to jail, and he told me to get his wallet and go get him out, which I did. But you see the mindset of not being a victim, because if you're always blaming someone else, you'll never take accountability. You can never change the situation. And now we are manufacturing that in a whole generation. It will not end well. Will not end well. So that's why I would send them to their utopia.
Yeah, absolutely.
7 years that they want.
That's too good. You've brought up one of the points that I feel most dearly about.
Yes.
Which is prison, punitive punishment, the legal system. I don't know how you feel about prison reform. I look at countries like Norway and some of the tactics that they've implemented that have lowered their recidivism. They had similar recidivism to us, about 70 to 80%, but they were able to curb that in just a couple years by a couple architectural changes, some policy changes. What do you think we could do here about our prisons? Yeah,
we have to start. You remember what I was saying about when we were talking about the drug addiction problem?
Mm-hmm.
This is very similar. We first have to acknowledge the problem, and I'm going to take you through a journey to get back to that point. I think the architects of the wickedness that we're seeing now, this is 150 years in the making. And they knew even at 100 years ago, you do not bring America down from the outside. You got to destroy her from within.
Mm-hmm.
The Black community has been the guinea pig for this project. So we're literally 2 decades from Reconstruction into the Civil War. We're already trending up in numbers like the world had not seen. This all flatlines in 1950 and has gone the opposite direction in the 60, 70 years since. What happened? Destroy the family. And so in my own lifetime, I'm born in 1976. When I started elementary school, mind you, like I said, so I'm at a school that is in a predominantly white neighborhood. So maybe 1 or 2 kids, no father in the home. This is even amongst the Black kids that were bused to the school. By the time I'm in high school, in my group, my immediate group, there's only 2 of us whose fathers are in the home. That's in a 7-year span. So we literally watched it happen in real time and the domino effects that come from it. And the statistics are so plain, yet one side if you bring it up, they claim racism. Well, we know when you remove the father, the child is, double the time likely to commit crimes, do poorly in school. If it's a girl, teenage pregnancy, because the home is out of the order that God set for us. And remember what I said with me. Now, this is dysfunction is totally, your home is dysfunctional if your child at 7 knows how to make his parents drink. That's not the model. You see what I'm saying? Yet and still, with that being said, you know what my dad was not going to accept? Me disrespecting law enforcement, me disrespecting coaches, me disrespecting teachers. He drilled it in me, even when he would be drinking, that he expected his son, I'm a junior, I was named after him, just as I had it every month. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. And then like I said, the other people in the community. My father-in-law didn't live long enough to see me marry his daughter. He died 4 years before we would get married. But his influence on me, that was my first job at 14, was working at that pharmacy. He was the first conservative that I ever met. And he didn't do a whole sermon on it. This was 92, 91, Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court. And so you have to understand, in the community, there was this divide because on the one hand, the identity politics crew said you have to have a Black Supreme Court justice to replace Thurgood Marshall, but not that one because he's a conservative. He's explaining this to me at 14, and it was planting the seeds of, what would be developed later. So how you bring it back to the reform part about prison, like we said, we have a we have a school to prison pipeline in the current system in America now. Because what we've seen in the last 4 years by what we're calling restorative justice and letting criminals out over and over and repeat offenders is not making any of the communities safer. And the people who are doing it in virtue signaling live in gated communities with armed security, so they don't feel the consequences. So you first have to adjust and address the issues that is causing it. I am considered by my haters. There are many of them, and my wife as well. We are considered. You've heard the terms: sellout, Uncle Tom. They get worse. Goons. Now, mind you, this is not second and third generational wealth, right? But it's because we're actually promoting the principles that is going to produce the American dream. It's not a guarantee, but that cannot be accepted in the community if you go against, the narrative and the so-called leaders. And that is exactly what got us into this position in the first place. So let's stay on the prison. You've heard it, of course, so many times, and we're in the heat of election season. You keep Biden crime bill, Biden crime bill, Biden. You've heard that so many times, right? What they don't mention is the Congressional Black Caucus was like the major pushers of it.
Wow.
Yeah, they leave that part out, right? And why were they pushing it? Well, we had gone from we've done this experiment before in the 60s and 70s, post-civil rights movement, where we play this game about soft on crime because, the punishment is racial. And then we get the fallout that we got in the 80s and 90s. And everyone said, biggest voice being Maxine Waters, that we have to get tough on crime. Why? Because the community was calling for it. I'm growing up, just as I couldn't go in either direction. It was a crack house to the left, to the right, and the other crack house was almost right across the street from us. So it was a reason why I always, kind of balk at the people that are like, well, so many black men were locked up, so many black. I'm like, well, yeah, they weren't backing up to churches and libraries, just grabbing black men and throwing them in the back, of a police car. I cannot go anywhere, bro. You don't know it's a 6'3", 240-pound black man that walks in the room. I don't drive around, with a fear that, the cops are waiting around the corner. Even with what I do, they don't know that, if I'm stopped. I understand. And was at dinner with some retired officers a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland. And he's like, Hollywood, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. And if I'm out of line, tell me. He was like, but you step out of a car, I'm going to ask you to sit back down because I don't know what you have in your mind. And if you do, and that comes to a hand-to-hand situation, you outweigh me by 70 pounds. That's probably not going to go well. And then when a gun gets involved, the race baiters jump in. They play the same game, make a lot of money, Al Sharptongue and others, and they go off to the next situation. The community is in turmoil, and we've lived that, where we grew up and saw them come in, do the hustle, leave. That community has not recovered today. It's Ferguson justice all over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I know a lot of the people at home, myself included, are absolutely inspired by what you're saying and are going to want to support you in your mission.
Yes.
Where do we go to support your organization?
Awesome. I need it. I go supportourshields.com. That is where they can definitely follow, everything that's going on, and on social media, YouTube, Facebook, X is at Support Our Shields. And literally, this is out of my pocket. This is my retirement, or what was supposed to be my retirement, because what I didn't share with you, Justice, was what I had done the previous 20 years was multimedia, predominantly for churches and nonprofits across the country that couldn't afford, the budget of what we're enjoying here. But wanted to get the message, their youth group, their women's Bible study. And I loved doing it. Well, that did two things. Getting accounts across the country allowed me to see so much of the country. and I saw what the media was reporting and how they reported, my background in this, seeing that they're shaping narratives to shape and mold public opinion. But it also showed me that the problems that I saw growing up are multiplying all across the country. And it's not just big urban population areas anymore. And so seeing that, I had one or two options. And I'm going to be honest with you, brother, I wanted one. And that was just to be quiet. Because, bro, 2020, 2021, remember what we talked about, the biggest conspiracy theory, right? My answer. So the churches, especially in the Black community, were shut down for not months, years. So I was being flown out every month across the country to produce sermons ahead of time because they went totally to streaming. Do you keep quiet and keep collecting the money? Or do you follow the Holy Spirit in the conviction saying, you know that this is wrong, this goes against my word. The same people who are doing this are banking big money, playing victim, and the community is dying.
Yes.
They're not being given the word. They're blaming other people. They're claiming that they're being racially targeted and racially targeting people at the same time. So that's hypocrisy to the highest order. Do you call it out? Because you know if you call it out, you're going to lose accounts, which I did. Yeah. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it because just like we shared off camera, there's going to be some difficulties that come. And so, I mean, trying to raise funds has not been easy. And I didn't want to wait. So I'm like, how do I sit here and watch 139 officers lost in 1 year? And that was down last year from 2022, which was down from 2021. And do nothing when it's because of their sacrifice that I literally lived the American dream. I'm the poster child, as I say, for the American dream. I think our conversation, you would agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This conversation with you has given me such inspiration and hope. Thank you for giving us this.
You're welcome, brother. Anytime.
We got to do this again.
Absolutely. Listen, just when you call, wherever I am, hey, we go on Zoom, update you, I would be honored to.
Absolutely. One final question for you.
Yes, sir.
If the whole world was listening right now, what message would you like to give them?
Absolutely. We're seeing our country, we're not only in the fourth quarter, just as we're at the 2-minute warning. We cannot be naive to think that America can't fall. Any nation that turns its back on God and kicks God out, he will give us what we want. That is not what we want. From a kid who grew up wondering, is this the night that your dad is going to kill your mom or your mom kill your dad? This is not what America wants. And we've allowed these, charlatans and chameleons to lead us down a path of unrighteousness that we are reaping what we have sown. We have to repent. We have to get on our face. We have to turn away from this. And it's not going to be easy, but it's mandatory. It's necessary.
Absolutely. God bless you. Thank you for everything you do.
Brother.
This has been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Did I tell us it's going to blow off of him?
Yeah.
PMG signing out.